In this preset walkthrough, we're taking a look at a patch I put together to take a single note from a guitar and harmonize it into a chord, and you'll be able to switch back and forth on foot switch 1 between major and minor triads. Foot switch 2 is assigned to get rid of the third of the chord altogether, so you just have a 5 chord, the root, the fifth, and then the octave up. And this patch is essentially just built to be a substitute for a synthesizer, for like a warm pad sound on a synthesizer. Maybe you don't have one in your band and you need that sound for a song, or you're recording, you don't have a synthesizer nearby. This is a great fill-in for that. So the video is a little long for sure. A lot of people like the detailed videos. Some people want to get to the point, and so my solution to that is to put all the information there, and if you feel like you want to skip around, just visit those timestamps in the description. Let's get to it. All right, so I have right here a triad pad synth patch, as I've called it. In a previous video, I went over the soft pad preset, which is much more widely usable. It's a little bit easier to use. There's no like technical foot switch changes, but I thought this one was also pretty cool. Kind of serves a similar purpose in that it's replacing what a synthesizer would do, like a very warm analog sounding pad synth, just kind of in the background. But this has a more artificial sound to it for sure, since it's not a guitar anymore. You might be playing a guitar, but the Helix is interpreting a sound that you play and assigning an entire chord to it. And I can walk you through how I set this up in just a second. There are a ton of presets, synth-style presets that I've been working through lately on my channel, just sharing the settings on the screen and giving tips on how you might set them up on your own device or build slightly different versions of them. And so if you're interested in checking any of those out, maybe see some of the other videos, there's going to be links in the description to a few. I had an 80s synth lead patch, which uses some of the legacy blocks here. And a common complaint with the Helix is that it's really difficult to use all of these. The fact is, if you just send it a certain type of signal, which I went over in that video, they're very usable. I have a warm lead, I call it a warm lead synth patch, which has a really nice portamento in between the notes. And this is using an oscillator block. We also have my very own like Pat Metheny emulation. Emulating his famous synth guitar patch. The soft pad, which I went over in the previous video, is just meant to replace essentially what a synthesizer would do. With an auto swell and a ton of different effects. We have a sub bass patch, which I'll get to in a future video. But the purpose of this video is the triad pad, so I'm going to walk you through that right now. We do have an LA studio comp right at the beginning of the signal path, which is smashing the signal from your guitar and feeding the synth pads something that it can work with, as a really nice sustaining sound. So we'll get to the pitch stuff in a second. Just kind of to give it the effect that you want, I do have an auto swell here combined with a delay. You could use the normal auto swell if you want. It actually uses more DSP, and if you're going for an ambient sound, this is a nice compromise because it includes a delay in there. We usually want at least one, if not two or more delays for these long sustaining ambient patches. So this is a nice way to get in there. I should note, as I just played there, this patch is not polyphonic. You want to only play one note, and then we'll use the foot switches to switch between major and minor tonalities. The other core effects here is that we just have an always-on Searchlights reverb. This is all in stereo, by the way. We have an optional Shimmer verb, which adds a lot to it, and then the retro reel for modulation at the end, a little bit of filtering as well. So getting on to the pitch shifting blocks here, which is where the actual magic of this preset is happening. You should know that this preset is monophonic, if I didn't mention that yet, so you can only play one note at a time. If you play two, it's going to glitch out and not really be too sure of what to do. So the first thing you should know is that we have a split crossover block here. So we're sending one path more of the fundamental notes of the guitar, and we're sending the other path kind of more of the harmonic information. And depending on what sort of pitch shifting you're doing, one might be more useful than the other. So that's my reasoning for that. I also found that it tracked a little bit better if I split up the signal like that. In the A path, we'll call this the A path on top, we have the first pitch shifting set up as interval 1 to go either +4 semitones up, or when you press foot switch 1, it switches to +3 semitones. So +4 semitones, if you count from A up to C sharp, that's going to be your major third. So you play an A note, and it harmonizes a major triad. If I press foot switch 1, it's going to harmonize a minor triad. It's switching the parameter there. You might also notice that the sense parameter is switching, and this just has to do with just intonation, perfect intonation. I play in orchestras. I'm a symphony player. I play viola and violin, and this is something that we're thinking about constantly since it's a fretless instrument, and in a symphony, it's not typical to have guitar, piano, or pitched percussion or harp, for example. There's plenty of music that has that in it, but typically with symphony orchestra, all the instruments, they don't have limitations like these instruments do, where you play a note and that's the pitch you get, right? With a string section, in order to make a chord perfectly in tune, if you're playing the third, you actually want to be, and here's the perfect number for it, 13 cents flat. And if you're playing a minor chord and you're playing the third, you actually want the third to be 16 cents sharp. And this just makes the chord sound a little bit more in tune and more natural. And so since we have the parameters here in the Helix, I thought I'd do that. I added a little bit of a delay just because I thought it made the sound a little bit thicker. And then we have the level here, which is hooked up to foot switch 2. You can actually get rid of the third harmonization entirely if you wanted to do that. Drop the V1, the interval level 1, all the way down. And now we just have a root and fifth harmonization, root, fifth, and octave. Or you turn that back up and you've got the third. You can choose between major and minor triads again. Interval 2 is +7 semitones, which if you count that one, is your fifth. So if you play an A note, it's going to harmonize an E above. So by now we have the root, the third, and the fifth. And I, again, tuned it a little bit. A fifth is pretty much perfectly in tune. If you increase it by 2 cents, then it becomes mathematically perfect. And then I added a little bit of a delay there as well. Moving on to the B path. I'm going to call this bottom one the B path. We have interval 1 set up as 0 because I didn't want the natural sound of the guitar coming through. I wanted it to blend with this digital kind of pitch shifted thing that's going on. And so I chose interval 1 here to be set actually at 0. And then I dropped the sense just a little bit to kind of give it a slightly wider sound. This is not even 1 cent, so it's really not happening all that much. Then we have interval 2, which I've set up to be +12 semitones, which is, you guessed it, an octave up from the original, we'll call it the fundamental note. So if you play a D note, we now have D, major third of F sharp, perfect fifth of A, and then the octave up D again. So for most uses, you'll probably want to stay in this lower range on the guitar. But of course you can play higher if you want. When you get up higher like that, it starts to sound a little bit unnatural. And so to make a... So there's the core of that. I'll run through the effects here. Like I said, we have the auto swell. We have a little bit of searchlights, reverb. You can increase the delay on that if you want. Then we also have a shimmer verb, which is later on here in the preset. And then I've added the retro reel all the way at the end after the reverbs, which helps warm up the sound and gets it in an area that might be a little bit more generically useful in different situations. I know this is like a very digital sounding patch, and that's kind of what we ended up here with all the pitch shifting, but I think that is what's going to be, we have the standard soft pad sound if we wanted that, which uses more traditional guitar sound. And if you want something that's a little bit more digital, we have this patch that I've created. Lastly, I also added in a filter here. And yeah, that's the gist of it. So we have the full preset here. If you like, you can just steal the settings from the screen. Let me make sure I captured all the parameter changes for you. Or, as I mentioned earlier, I have over 100 presets and 5 impulse response bundles, all put together in what I call my complete preset library. It's updatable, so one purchase gets you free updates for life. And these are the presets that I personally use when I play out with the Helix. I've spent years making them. I know 100 plus presets sounds like a lot of stuff to sort through, but everything's really well organized. And one of the things that I've done is I actually created a very long PDF explaining the use of each of these patches, what my thought process was, and what all the foot switches are laid out in, to do. With some of these special effects presets, it gets a little complicated, so there's a lot of information there for sure. But know that there's plenty of more straight ahead sounds. So we do have an entire file folder organization system here. Like, here's a bunch of acoustic instruments. I have a naming scheme that I've detailed in the initial document. So A would be acoustic guitar. The last letter there would be, depending on what type of pickup you have, if it's a contact piezo, magnetic, or an undersaddle piezo. Single preset for banjo, some mandolin stuff, nylon guitar with an undersaddle pickup, ukulele. Then we have presets for electric bass with flat wound strings, and those same presets that I've tuned and dialed in and perfected and performed in order to get a good picture of what it sounds like with round wound strings. Then we have plenty of patches for electric guitars with humbuckers and single coils, some jazz guitar presets, the special effects, which I ran through earlier, and I also have a bunch of violin. Like I said, I'm a violin player too, so I have a bunch of violin effects in here. The impulse responses, I have a couple custom ones here. So this is one that I've created of my Alvarez classical guitar. That's it, actually. Then I have an acoustic guitar that I captured. I have my mandolin that I captured in IR form to hopefully get you a better mandolin sound out of your pickup. Ukulele IR, a few violin IRs, and then also here's the big one, the one that I've been excited about, and I got a lot of great feedback on. This is a capture of my Mesa Boogie cabinet with Celestion Vintage 30 speakers. And we have a bunch of different IRs here. My kind of theory was that I'd rather give you a small number of IRs that are really actually finely tuned, so that they're useful and you're not wasting your time flipping through a ton of different, versions. Of course, I could have taken the same mic and moved it half an inch and created a new IR, but at the end of the day, you want a good sound, and so I feel like these IRs that I've created really represent the essence of the amp and that microphone combination. It's in the right spot. I listen to everything, and so this is going to save you a lot of time compared to other preset packages that just kind of give you 50 or 100 plus different IRs. We also have versions of these IRs with a room mic, a Neumann U87, and you can choose the phase-aligned versions or the non-phase-aligned, which give you a little bit more of the room sound. Sounds a little bit more natural, but at the expense of some slight phasing issues. So that's up to you which of those you want to use, and of course plenty of different versions depending on what kilohertz, what sample rate you're working at. Helix runs at 48, so I would use that with the Helix, but you have some other options here for if you want to throw it in a different modeler that you own maybe, or in a a recording session that you're working on that's at a different sample rate. So they're there if you want to check that out. There's going to be links in the description, or you could just go to my website, find it. And if you have any questions, leave me a comment down below. I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.